Okay, folks, video 3, let's get into probability. So first things first, probability is a numerical measurement regarding the likelihood of something happening versus the likelihood of that event not happening. So when we look at probability, it's also helpful to understand the difference between probability and the percent chance. So probability is a type of mathematics that is concerned about the numerical description of how likely something is to occur. So it can range from 0 probability, meaning there's no chance that it's going to happen, all the way up to 1, which means it's a 100% certainty that it's going to happen. Similarly, if we were to look at chance, we would have to understand this on a 0 to 100 scale, where once again, if it's a number closer to 0, we would say it's almost impossible or not likely at all, to 100, which again would represent a certainty that it's definitely going to happen. And so we can use this branch of mathematics in order to get a sense and to quantify the likelihood of something happening versus the likelihood of it not happening. So let's look at this in a little bit of a different terminology. So we've talked about probability from a definitional perspective, and we said we can look at it from the perspective of probability and chance. But what do we actually need to know about probability in order to effectively be able to use it? So let's take a step and let's look at what's known as an event. So an event is a term that represents a collection of outcomes or results of a given procedure. So the likelihood of something happening would be an event. The likelihood of something not happening would also be a non-event. So then you can look at the ratio of something happening versus not happening, the chance of it happening versus not happening. In the case of a simple event, we're talking about an outcome or a result of a procedure that cannot be broken down into simpler components. And then we have something that's known as a sample space, which represents all of the possible simple events for a given procedure. So these are some important terms. In terms of notation, we have to use the words A, which represents the likelihood of the event happening, and B, which is the likelihood of the event not happening. So if we use this notation, P stands for probability, and A represents the event, we're looking at the probability of the event happening in this particular case. So there are different tools and strategies that we can use in order to find the probability for a given research question. And I've organized them in a series of 3 rules. The first rule talks a little bit about what's known as relative frequency. So if you remember when we calculated percentages, we said that that was a relative estimate of how often something happened out of the total number of participants. And so the way we would define relative frequency would be very similar. We're looking at observing a procedure a large number of times and counting how often that event, A, happens. So the formula that we would use is P, the probability of A event, the thing, happening. So we're looking at the number of times that A occurred out of the possible number of times. So if you remember from when we were doing this with, so if we look at an example and we note that 57 of the last 100 applicants for a job have been females, we can estimate the probability that the next applicant will also be female, right? So if we're hosting a job and we have 100 applicants and 57 of the last 100 that have applied have been females, we can get a probability estimate that the next candidate who applies for a job will also be female. And so the way that we would do this with rule 1 is taking the probability equation. So the probability of the next person being female would be A, the number of females out of the last 100 that applied for that position, 57, divided by the number of applications that were reviewed, 100. and you get a decimal of 0.57, or if you multiplied that by 100, you would get 57%. So there's a 57% chance that the next applicant for a job will be female. Simple enough. If we look at Rule 2, this is described as equally likely outcomes, or a classical approach to probability. And this assumes that the procedure has n possible events, and each of those events has an equal probability of occurring. So the formula that we use in this particular case is still the probability of A, the event happening, but we're looking at a number of ways in which A can occur, divided by the total number of simple events. Okay, so in the first example, it was very simple. We had 57 females out of the last 100, and so we assumed that 57% chance would be the likelihood that a female would be the next applicant to apply. However, in the example of using a dice, if we were to roll the dice and we wanted to estimate the probability of getting a number less than 3 coming up, we would have to first understand how many sides of a dice there are, right? And there are 6 sides to a dice. So if I'm interested in how often, or what's the likelihood if I roll a dice that the probability that the number will be less than 3 shows up. So I have to understand, well, there is 1 and 2 sides of the dice that could show up as the event of A out of 6 possible sides, right? So if I want to know the probability of when I roll that one single dice, what's the likelihood of getting a 1 or a 2? Well, that's 2 event chances. Each of those would be a valid representation of an event, divided by 6 possible sides of the dice. And so we would have a 33% chance that if we rolled a single dice, that it would come up as either a 1 or a 2, right? Because those are both below 3. In the third possible rule, when it comes to probability, we can do things that are known as intuition. So in this case, we're looking at the probability of a event, the thing happening, and we're determining that from an estimation of some perceived value based off of circumstances and context. And so in this particular case, if we ask people if they're coming to class, the student may say, I'm 95% sure that I'm coming to class, but I'm just not sure if I'll have the car to drive to campus, right? Okay. So we're not actually rooting the probability in reality based off of mathematical concepts with Rule 3. Instead, we're doing it based off of a subjective guess that we're estimating, okay? So these are 3 ways in which we can measure and determine the probability of an event A, representing the event, happening compared to when it's not happening. And so one of the things that's important to understand when we're using these 3 different ways of determining probability is that as the sample size increases, right, as we can get the relative frequency of an outcome and we're getting closer to the theoretical probability value of what it actually will be, right? So the more participants, the more people from the sample that represent the larger population, the more accurate and reliable that probability will be, as opposed to sticking with a very small subgroup of people, okay? So now that we understand the 3 different ways in which we can determine probability, let's talk a little bit about this thing called the complement of event A, or the event happening. So it's very simple. A complement is nothing more than the likelihood of an event not occurring, right? So if A represents the event and we wanted to determine the complement of A, we would use the example that says if the probability is that it's going to snow and there's a 30% chance of snow, then the complement would be 1 minus 0.3, and you would get a 70% chance that the event's not going to happen, right? And so the probability that event A will not occur, and that is determined by taking 1 minus the event probability, okay? Sometimes, though, probabilities can get even more complex where we have 2 or more possible events that can occur together. And we call this a compound event, which is when we have 2 or more simple events that can occur. And so when we talk about these compound events, where there's 2 or more things at play, 2 or more events that could happen, we can do this with an and or an or type of way of thinking about them. So if we use the and, this is looking at the probability that both things will happen together. Whereas with the or probability, we're looking at the probability that at least one of the 2 possible events occur, right? So whenever you see the word and we're talking about a compound event, I want you to associate the word and with multiplication. And I want you to associate the word or with addition, okay? And so the notation that we used, remember, for basic probability, it was the probability of A happening, where A represented the simple event occurring. But when it comes to the multiplication rule, we are looking at the probability of A and B happening together or at the same time. Whereas in the or situation, where we associate that with the addition rule, we're looking at the probability of A or B happening. Either one of those will satisfy the probability equation. So what could this look like? Well, if we look at this from the perspective of independent events, we are looking at the probability of event A happening and event B happening when those 2 things are independent, meaning A doesn't depend on B and B doesn't depend on A, right? We're just looking at unique probabilities of both of those things happening, but they don't actually influence each other. So the probability of A and B, the multiplication rule, therefore would be you'd figure out the probability of A and you would multiply it by the probability of B. If it's a dependent event where the probability of A given B, right, then the occurrence of one event will change the probability of the other event. Okay, so when something is a dependent event, it means that when we calculate the probability of the event happening, or the complement, the probability of the event not happening, is that when A happens, it affects B. And when B happens, it affects A. Whereas in independent events, those 2 things happen at the same time, but they're not dependent upon each other. They are completely able to work independently. Okay, so we have that. We also have something that's known as a mutually exclusive concept, which is the probability of the event A or B happening when they are mutually exclusive, which means they can't happen at the same time. So very similar to how we had independent events with the multiplication rule, we apply that as a mutually exclusive concept for the addition rule, okay? So in the addition rule, we're looking at the probability of A or B happening, but they cannot happen at the same time, okay, by design. A non-mutually exclusive addition rule would be the probability of the event A or B happening when they are not mutually exclusive, meaning if they're not mutually exclusive and independent, it means they can occur simultaneously. So when it comes to calculating the addition rule, you would very simply calculate the probability of event A happening, and then you would calculate the probability of event B happening. And because it's using the root word or, you would add the probability of A plus the probability of B, and that new summed probability would represent the probability of A or B happening, right? Whereas in the multiplication rule, we were expecting A and B must happen together at the same time. So I hope this video was helpful. In the next video, we're going to get into descriptive statistics and measurements of central tendency.